A certified wing. We have the wing standing on the leading edges at the moment. It's joined at the centre. We have put tape over all the exposed bolts with filament tape, 3 layers. All the tubes are nice and clean. Tape with any rub points. Down on the end of the tube there. Don't get excessive with the taping because it actually makes the sail harder to fit. Mainly on the bolt heads. And the compression tubes at the root have to be taped in position because they have a self-aligning sleeve, and if the tube moves a bit, then it can actually fall out of place. And we put the sail down at the end of the wing, so the trailing edge is facing up, wing is slightly closed, and if we get the sail here, and we close the wing just about all the way, and we place the sail on the wing. Just carefully putting the sail over the wing, and someone has to stabilise the wing so it doesn't fall over. And now, by lifting the wing up a little bit, we just edge the sail on. And this must be on a padded surface. If you do this on the concrete, then it will hold the sail. Got to keep the sail fairly straight, and we just edge it along slowly. And we're actually lifting the frames off the ground, edging them along, and every 500 millimetres, 450 millimetres, the sail catches in the slots for the battens, and it can tear the sail. So you've got to keep putting the sail in position. And make sure that the batten slots don't get torn in the wing as they're sliding it on. So you've got to go steady. Don't let them force it. Okay, at this point we'll stop for a sec. Okay, we're back to fitting the sail. We've got a third person to hold the sail nice and straight and even. We keep the Velcro gap seals right to the top, and we can use them for dragging the cloth. And we take a little bit of weight off the frame, we just edge it along. As it catches in the slots, we just make sure the slots get over the trailing edge. This has to be done very steady. And keep pulling the gap seal up so that the gap seal's on the top of the tube approximately. One end of the swing frame supported off the ground with just a bit of fine timber. That just keeps a bit of an airspace under there, so we're not dragging the sail between the floor and the frame. So as we pull each time, we try to lift a little bit of weight of the frame. Sail pulled up again. And we're just getting someone to stand on the frame. That helps lift the weight off the main wings over the prop, and it just stops us from dragging the cloth against the floor. Now we're up to the timber now, so we have to lift this timber out close to the end loop. And for holding the wings up, we can actually hold it up using the cloth whilst we pull the cloth. And we just pull the cloth until it's pulled itself right into the corners at the end and drag it into the centre. Okay, so we just pull it up as tight as possible into the corners without being excessive about it at this point in time. The main thing is to try to get most of the slack up there. Alright, so we've got the cloth on as far as we can at this point. And now we're going to open the wings out and lay them flat on the floor. So you need one person in the centre of the wing, one each wing tip. Okay, down here. And you mustn't drag the wing on the ground. So we're opening the wing out very slowly. As it comes out to this point, it gets very tight, so you may have to help the cloth along. And then you open the wing out straight. Alright. Back. That's not straight. That's past it. Okay. And now if you go around the back edge, back sides, in the centre, and we lay the wing down flat. Try not to let it slide on the floor, and it just goes down flat. And the wing connection brackets will over-centre. They usually move out of alignment. Got the wing sitting flat on the floor, and we're using old sailcloth here on the floor. You can actually do this on any covering that you can put on the floor, canvas or whatever, or you can do it on a carpeted floor if you've got a carpeted floor. And we'll get ready for the next stage. Okay, next stage, with the wing sitting flat on the floor, we're using 2 levers. If you use just a big screwdriver, you've got to be careful that it doesn't indent the end of the tube. So something that's a bit flatter, broader, and on that side we're using a car tyre lever, as long as it fits in neatly. We put it in between the 2 tubes, and we carefully prise the brackets down flat on the floor. And once they're down dead flat, we put our feet on it so they can't spring over, and we have someone on the wingtip lift the wingtip up approximately 1.5 metres. So that goes up and a little bit higher, and that pulls a lot of tension to the bottom surface. It's dragging the 2 pieces of sail together. And we just place down weight to try and stretch it a little bit, and you lower that wing down, and if you go to that wing there, look, and lift that one up. You can lift as high as 2 metres or so with the wingtips. It's just to get the main stretching and make sure that the Velcro will meet in the centre. Okay, lower the wing. Alright. Next stage. With the bracket sitting flat, this stage is pretty tricky and it doesn't always work out straight off. We've got to try and lift the wings up and put them in a V shape without the brackets in the centre of the wing over-centering. So we've got to try and keep them flat. And we'll step across now, and we're going to lift the wing up on its leading edge, very carefully, and going to lift the centre back, and that's it there. That's it there. Now I've got the wing in a slight V, the way it would be on a plane, but a little bit excessive. The sail is under an awful amount of tension in the bottom surface, as long as these brackets stay perfectly flat. If they go out of alignment, you can use the 2 levers and push them back into alignment whilst it's standing on its leading edge. Now the next stage is, below the cloth is the close-off seam where we sew the edges of the cloth together. Wherever the seams are under the cloth, you feel for them with your finger, at the wing tip, they must remain the same all the way to the wing root. So we go out to the wing tips, we feel where the seam is. If the seam is twisted over, it leaves a bump in the sail, and there's a bump here. So we just lift the sail up and flick the seam so it's staying the same as it is at the tip. And the reason for that is that there's so much tension in the tip that it's not possible to get the seam the same side on both sides. Sometimes it ends up on the same side, sometimes it doesn't. So the thing is, as long as the seam is sitting in the same position at the wingtip and at the root, then you won't have an overlap of the close-off sewing seam. And that seam is inside, you don't see it on the outside. You actually feel with your fingers for where the seam is. So we're just running our fingers along. And this is the left wing, and on the left wing the seam is sitting on the top side, all the way to the root. And on the right wing, is sitting on the top side as well, and we're just sliding along, still sitting on the top side, still sitting on the top side, and it's done a changeover just in the last 500 millimetres, which we're just trying to flick the seam over here by lifting up. And in at the root, it gets a bit hard at times, and sometimes you've got to use a bit of a long screwdriver and just flip the seam over. It can be a little bit tricky at times and bites you a bit, but eventually you should win. And then, because there's 4 layers of cloth in the seam, and we want those 4 layers to all be on the same side. And they are now. And the sail looks like it's fitting up okay. So, next procedure is you make sure the brackets are sitting even. And these ones are just going a little bit out of alignment. If you can get me that bar on the side. Move that one down there. And I'll hang on to this one. Keep it going, keep it going. Okay, so both wing joining brackets are in alignment now. The sail is very tight underneath, not so tight on top. And the seams are in their correct positions. If we check the Velcro, it easily reaches. In fact, it goes over past the edge of the Velcro here by 15 millimetres, which is okay. The biggest problem is that if it wasn't reaching, then we would have a problem, and that could be a problem with the frame or a problem the sail hasn't pulled itself in at the wingtips. And if it's pulled itself in correctly at the wingtips, then the stitch should be pulling itself apart a little bit. Should be stretching the stitch line all the way down the wingtips. So have a good look up the wingtips and make sure that the stitch is stretched out on the trailing edge. You can see the stitch pulling. That means you can't go any further. That's about the limit of the tension. Okay, our next stage now is to get the battens prepared. And check them on a profile to make sure they're all identical in shape, and then we'll be fitting the battens. So we'll be on to that in a sec. Okay, next stage. I've got the wing sitting there, I've done the seam, brackets are over centred, so the sail feels really tight here. Tight as a drum across the bottom surface, nothing in the top surface. Now we're just using baby powder here, and we drop a bit of baby powder on the tubes. There mustn't be any residual glue from any tapes, so when you check your battens for profile on that, you make sure there's no sticky tape or any glue on the battens, because it'll stop them sliding. And all we're doing here is putting a bit of powder on the end. The new sails are very tight, and a bit of powder just makes them slide down the pockets easier. And we only put it in the front section of them. You don't have to powder them all the way. And so I'll grab these battens now and move around to the back of the wing where all the slots are. You can bring those ones here, Luke. So we're back again, we're on the back side with the battens. And we just start pushing the top battens, the big curved ones, in through the slots, into the pockets. You just got to look inside and you can see the pocket. Find it in the pocket and just start the first part of the batten. There's one batten that's really hot. It's got a broken tip on it. There. Okay, now we've put the battens in starting at the wing tip first, working towards the centre. Don't start at the root and work outwards. Start at the wing tip. So I'm working over the wing tip and we find the slot. And we just get the batten started in there, only 200 millimetres into the pocket. Now, there is a bit of juggling to find the actual pocket, the loop pocket. not too difficult, will take you just to find them, and just put the patterns in. You also got to be careful that the brackets don't over centre, because if the brackets over centre, the sail will lose its tension and it'll get wrinkles all along the trailing edge, and those wrinkles will be hard to get out later. So if it pops in the centre, you must reset the centre brackets again, and there mustn't be any wind around, because the wind can fall over quite easily in this position. Okay, so we're working along there. And there's two ribs that go inside the wing here, and you put them in from the side. You find the holes for the pockets in there, and you fit them in sideways. But once again, they mustn't go down just yet. We have to wait until we've got to work in sequence, always starting at the wing tip. Okay, so we've got all the top ribs in position, and be careful putting them in that you don't put too much pressure, because you can actually bend the shape out of the battens quite easily. Once all the ribs are in position, we'll start pushing them down one wing at a time, and it's best if you have two people. You can do it on your own. The first batten, if you're doing it on your own, you push it down about halfway and it gets tight. So you push the one alongside of it halfway, and you push the third one halfway. Then you come back to the first one, push it a bit further, the next one a bit further, and the next one. It's the first three battens, starting from the tip, are the tightest ones in the whole sail. And if you try to force the first one all the way on a tone, you sometimes can cause some damage to the cloth. So let each batten help the next one along, and then we push them down as far as we can, and they should end up with the back plastic curve of the batten sitting about midpoint on the trailing edge of the wing. So it's below the trailing edge, about halfway down, and then so we put all the battens in place now, and we can work together for the second person and push both at the same time. We go to the centre, and then we go to the far wingtip and work backwards to the centre again. So we'll just work through that quickly now. So we're going to the other wingtip now. I'm going to start at the wingtip, work back to the centre, and then I'll show you the next procedure. Okay, next stage is once we've got the top battens down and about halfway down the trailing edge, we've got to push them in. And sometimes you can rest lightly on your foot under the leading edge. That helps the batten to get a bit lower. And we're using a big steel bar here. And to get the battens down, sometimes we tap them down till they're just below the centre line of the tube. And this could be a piece of pine, just 2B1 pine, and we place it on the trailing edge and we push inward and we clip the batten end onto the tube. Now you don't want to drive the battens down too far because you're trying to poke them out the front, but you've got to have them in far enough that you can clip them over and in. If you hit on the end of the batten here, you'll snap the plastic end off. So when we're hitting, we're placing the load straight down the batten itself, so it's right up on the end of the batten. So I've just tapped that lightly, and the batten end, place it down. Batten end is below the centre line, and I hold this with my hand on the trailing edge, and I use it as a lever to push it down and in at the same time. And it clips in, it goes in bang. This one here, once again, too high. this one down. We have a tight one, so we just lift the wing up a little bit. Just in case it's pushing against itself on the floor, lifting it off, and it's clipped in. So we just work our way along the battens, each one, pushing it down. If you put too much load on the end of the batten plastic, it will snap off, so any load you put on must be directed down the aluminium tube. And just make sure they seat in there. Work through all the top battens, always start at the tip, work to the centre, the other tip, work back to the centre. Then once they're in, I'll show you the procedure for putting in the bottom battens. The sail is still under tension, held in the centre at the moment. Okay, next stage, we'll put all the... Okay, next procedure. Sail's all tied along the trailing edge. We've got the top battens in. We're going to put the lower battens in now. And we put the battens in back to front to find the pocket. As soon as we find the pocket, we rotate the batten the correct way, only putting it in by about 250 millimetres. Once again, the bend backwards. A little bit of trouble locating the pocket. As soon as it's in the pocket by 75mm, rotate it, get it in the correct way. You just got to feel up and down until you actually feel the pocket. If you can't find it, put your finger in the slot and open up the pocket. When they're new, they don't like to, they're a bit closed off. And sometimes you're lucky and sometimes you're not. And at the moment I'm not lucky. So this one's a little bit difficult. So I just put my finger inside the pocket, find the batten pocket and open it up with my finger. And it just opens up the pocket, and then it should be quite easy to find it. And we'll just slide the batten in. Move on to the next one. Remember, everything is always done from the tip towards the centre. Rotate the batten. Just start it that way. Once all the battens are in along the trailing edge, once again, we push them down at the tip first, work towards the centre, and then I'll show you the next procedure. Okay, next stage, with the battens, the lower ribs pushed in position, they get about halfway down the trailing edge. You've got to use a flat screwdriver and very carefully through the slot, just move the cloth out of the way of the plastic. Look at the batten that's on the leading edge and move it to one side so that the two are misaligned to each other, because they both want to line up and they won't go in that way. So we've actually got to put the screwdriver in the slot, slide the one batten over to one side, use the lever, a piece of timber or whatever, and push the lower rib in position. Tap it down just very lightly. Make sure there's no sailcloth caught underneath the end of the batten. Slide inside, move the other batten to one side slightly and push it in. And you just work the procedure from the wingtip again all the way to the centre of the wing, one batten at a time. You can push them with your finger, but it's very hard. Just a flat piece of timber or just a bar, and just over centre them and flick them in. And that's the procedure for putting the lower battens in, and we'll be on to the next procedure in a sec. Okay, next stage, all the battens are in. Wing still standing on the leading edge. We're going to lay the wing down flat now and make sure that there's no obstacles underneath where it's going to go. It's going to put a hole in the sail. So we make sure there's nothing underneath. Then we lift the wings straight. And then we get behind it and lower it down. And try not to let it slide so that it doesn't put a rough mark through the sail. Okay, so the sail's flat on the floor now, and we go back to the first procedure with the bars in the centre. These ones have over-centred now, so the wing's sitting cockeye. We're just going to bring these over very carefully, watching not to put any weight on the sail. And then we get ourselves a rubber hammer, and the rubber hammer has some cloth around it to protect the rubber from leaving marks on the sail. And we're going to stretch the sail in and move all the wrinkles out. And when we're happy, then we'll burn the holes out for the rigging. So we've got the bracket sitting flat, and we've got a rubber hammer with some cloth around it. And with the bracket sitting down, one person stays in the centre and stands on the bracket so that it stays flat. And the other person lifts the wingtip up carefully. And what you do is keep an eye on the far bracket, and if it starts lifting up, then you can tap it down. Lower the wing back down, please, quickly. Now I had to lower the wing down on that one because the bracket had started to over-centre at the front. I couldn't hold it with my foot. The back one's okay, it's just the front one then got out of whack. And it's just moving around a bit here at the front. Probably because the sail tension is too tight in the front, it's okay in the back. Alright, look, moving to lift it up again. Now when Luke lifts it up here, the cloth will be stretched underneath. And it's getting very, very tight. That's enough to tie up about 1.5 metres off the ground. And then I pull the Velcro over as much as I can get at the leading edge, and we lower the wing down. Now this now will start stretching the wing, and it gets tighter and tighter as it gets lower. And the Velcro pulls itself back a bit. And we can bump on the side of the battens right up at the leading edge to try and move them towards the centre and move all the wrinkles into the centre. And the sail's getting very tight on the top now, but we still have to make sure we've got all the wrinkles moved down the leading edge. We made sure we've got the wrinkles out of the trailing edge, and we are moving any extras now in the stretching procedure. So if the wing's sitting okay, and it is just, it might pop in the centre. I'll move out towards the wingtip, and I'll tap each of the battens just on the first 50mm of the batten, just to move them that way a little bit. So I'm just tapping each batten towards the centre. It may over-centre in the centre, but we don't worry about that at this stage because we just want to move the sail a bit, then we'll do another stretch. Don't hit up high on the batten, only right on the leading edge and only on the side. Just a light hit. And they all move probably about 2mm to 3mm. And as you're going along, you notice that most of the wrinkles are in the last metre of the sail. As long as there's no wrinkles along the leading edge, you might get a little bit of wrinkling in the panels, which will find its way out later. The main thing is to draw the sail to the centre as much as you possibly can, so that the cloth that's right against the leading edge is tight. So we'll do one more stretch now. I'm going to open up the Velcro. I'm going to recheck the brackets in the centre, and they're sitting down okay. Now Luke's going to lift the wing up again. We're going to do another stretch. Now I'm pushing down on the cloth here, trying to yank any loose cloth along. Once again, put the Velcro. This Velcro is actually reaching 20mm past itself at the moment. This is much more dihedral than it would normally be in the wing. And as we lower it down, it will really tension up the top edge. Away you go. Okay, tension's coming on. And just bump it there and bump it on this one as far as the ring. The sail's quite tight. It's looking good along both leading edges. The wrinkles that I've got in here will come out when I actually join the Velcro up properly in the end result. But it's got to be, the cloth must be tight at all the bolt points. We must have moved it because once we fit the bolts off, then you can't, if you have got any wrinkles, they won't move later on. So this is sitting quite okay. And because the tension is holding very tight here, we're actually going to set off now on the sail. And if the brackets are sitting flat in the centre, we can lift the wingtips up and put them on a chair. So on the far side, only on the very end of the tip, we sit it on the chair. You don't want the pressure to go underneath the cloth, but you don't want it to fall off the chair. So it must only rest on the wingtip tube, not on the sailcloth. And with this procedure, putting them up, and that holds tension in, if the bracket's over centre, you have to lower the wing down and reset the brackets again, check the Velcro tight, and then lift the wingtips one at a time, or if you've got a couple of people, lift both up at the same time, put them on the G. The biggest consideration is that the brackets stay flat on the floor. The sails start to go a bit looser in the top now because of the dihedral coming up. And if they're staying down nice and flat, we can tap them with the rubber hammer. This bracket's up by 2 mm, so I'll just tap that one down. And it's flat on the floor. So the bottom of the surface of the wing is actually in tension. There's a little bit of tension being held by the Velcro still locked. There's no wrinkles down the trailing edge, there's no wrinkles along the leading edge. That's the cloth that's sitting against the leading edge. There's a couple of little wrinkles in the centre and wrinkles at the tip. There are only small wrinkles in the major part of the cloth, and they'll find their way out. A good check is to check along the tips that the stitching is really pulled on tight, very, very tight on the curve of the wingtip. And so is as far as it can go. So now, with it in this position, we can burn all the holes out, and that'll be the next procedure, and set off the cables. So we'll do that next. Next procedure now is we're going to go along something slightly pointy. You can feel with your finger for where the holes are, and when you find the holes, you can just poke a little hole, but be sure that you've got a hole and not a rivet. And so we poke the holes, then we're using a little gas torch here, and we'll heat up a piece of tube, burn the holes out, place all of our rigging in position, and then bolt all the rigging on. And once all the rigging is bolted on, because the sail's being held in tension like this, then the wing is ready to place on the aircraft. The only extra thing we have to do is we put the tie straps in the centre, which we'll do a little bit later. So we're just going to burn all the holes out now, we'll find all the locations, and then we'll be fitting the rigging.